So I'm happy to introduce next Berthe Christensen Dalsgaard from the Royal Library in Denmark, giving a slightly different take on the issue of discovery.
Normally when I sit at a conference, I change my talk because I hear a presentation and I want to include something from those presentations. This is the first time where I have changed the complete talk, and I think we can attribute that to some very exciting talks which has been here the first few days. And also, I'm actually less technical than I had expected to be, so it's not going to be a technical talk as I sort of have outlined. I think one of the things which I've seen here and which I've noticed increasingly is there seems to be a split between, in a sense you might call it the library community and the universities, the students, the researchers. Libraries tend to sort of live within their own RDS system, the library system, and try to improve it in different ways. And of course, they will hopefully be successful. Students and researchers, as we have heard, live in different worlds. And I think, the way I'm going to present my talk is really very much along those lines, including some of the observations done during the first few days. I have the liberty of actually flying high. I'm not bound by a research, and of course, we need that. That's the basis of everything the rest of us can say who try to take a much broader and higher view. So, the objective of the talk is really to share some of the thoughts I have had on resource discovery over the last 10 years. Especially, of course, it's going to be around the cloud, because that's what I've phrased in the beginning, but also services which you develop locally, and that's actually on the ground. As I said, it's going to be strongly influenced by some of the past talks, and I even have a few slides which I've got from the speakers of some of the other talks. And the way I'm going to organize it is I'm going to take a historical perspective. I think sometimes you actually realize things if you try to view it from a different angle. I'm going to touch upon what actually it is that researchers want, the research object, which you also heard Peter de Rood talk about. I'm going to talk a bit about the next generation search, which I think is really what we all focus on, and also what the previous talks have focused on. Trust and quality, as we heard Carol talk about, and then mine different sources, and I'll come with some concluding remarks. So, technological changes. I heard a talk almost 10 years ago, and I haven't actually been able to find any reference to this kind of model, but it makes sense to me, so now I'm going to present it to you. When you have technology change, the first thing which happens is really that you do the same thing, just a little better. So in this case, we have the catalog, and we have technology coming along, and what we do is that we actually first have the OPAC, and then later on we have these resource discovery systems and the integrated library systems. One of the advantages, at what we heard about in the last talk, of course, is that now we are able to create centralized indexes, and we can give a much better service to our users. But what about the next? Well, the next is, in this model, they call the infuse and diffuse. That means that the technology will actually totally be immersed in our daily life, in our daily research, and maybe we are not really so focused on the kind of tools because they will be embedded. And I heard a talk by Ray Kurzweil, and what he talked about really was that the brain will extend to the cloud. Now, he works for Google now, and really one of his vision is to try to find out how you can extend your brain so that all the information is there and can be used seamlessly in the way you you don't even have to think, you have to make hypotheses, and then you sort of get the information, if you can. That'd be interesting to see. A few months ago, I heard a talk at the IDCC in San Francisco, and I think it was actually provoking in several ways, because here was a top-class researcher having funded 20 companies, all being very successful in different areas, and he was actually demonstrating how you could do clinical research without going into a laboratory. You could buy the samples online, go in and search in some databases. you could actually send that to some laboratories to be examined, or you might actually get data for someone, and you might order different kind of analysis on those data. Of course, you then had to write your paper yourself, but everything else could actually be done from the desk. You could do clinical research without even going into the laboratory. They may not need to want to do that, but in principle, that is possible. And I think that also shows us something about what kind of search we are going to have in the future. Because it's not just going to be search for information. We have already talked about knowledge. It's going to be search for knowledge. But it's going to be much, much broader what the researcher will need to identify. And I think this is actually an effect of the globalization, where you really get all of this stuff and you can start to do things in complete and new ways which we haven't envisioned before. I mean, one of Kurzweil's points was that humans develop linearly, whereas technology develops exponentially. So there's going to be a growing split between what we as human beings can consume and what the technology can do for us. And there's been some of the talks in the last few days which also has talked about machine digestible or machine readable information, and you can machine actable information. You need the machine to do much more, and we really need to fit all of this together so that we get the best mix. And I think that is really where the information seeking is going. Now, a lot of the stuff which Atul was looking at, he actually found in databases. And now we have had a lot of talk here about databases or unified search, web-scale search. And it's sort of interesting because there's this report by Ithaca published 2 years ago, where they looked at different, how students actually, or researchers actually found information. And one of the results they had was, there was this very big difference between science and humanities in whether or not they use databases. Here you can see that we really have, the social science, I've changed to. Sorry, I got the wrong one in. What that one showed is that actually databases is used much more in science than it is in humanities. Another thing which was shown in that analysis, which I found quite interesting, was that they showed that if they compare where students started in 2003 and up to 12, they actually showed that the runaway from the library database actually may have turned, and the start in databases may be reduced, but as I said before, that might be because of humanities getting much more into the online world. But there are things here which indicate that there's something which the libraries can offer, which is of interest, even though we know that students start in Google. And we saw that, this is from GM's talk the other day, and I was really stunned when he showed this one. How do I search for new papers? Where's the library? It's not there. It's Google search, it's PubMed queries, and it's emails from colleagues. And I think this is very typical. Very often, we are not the first bet for the students or for the researchers. And of course, I think we need to ask ourselves why that is. And if we can't come up with an answer, maybe we should do something else. So this points to sort of, in a sense, what we might be looking at in the future, and this could have been, Kurzweil, could have been a lot of others, is we really want somehow some bot to go out and find all the stuff we're interested in. Because it's quite interesting, each time I see a presentation about resource discovery systems, it's interesting how you can make it work for certain specific things, and then when you sort of twist slightly, then something else comes up, and it's not really exactly what you had expected. You might want to mix searches in metadata with searches in full articles, Now, that turns out to be extremely hard to balance so that the full articles are not overwhelming, the metadata search, but even though the metadata might actually be more controlled. But there are a lot of challenges by actually trying to get these words, and if you tweak it to one, then, you'll find out that it really doesn't work for the other. So, I think each of us have our very special needs, and we really would like our very personal bots to get out there. But now that's not what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to go back to my library catalog. And in a sense, this is not to be provocative, but somehow I feel that presently we are closer to the cards than we are to the bots. And if you saw this evolution, we are closer to the second stage than actually to the third stage, which is infuse and diffuse. So, and what are some of the things which can help us there? I'm optimistic. Cloud computing. We all talk about getting into the cloud. We want library systems in the cloud. We want resources coverage systems in the cloud. We want information in the cloud. And of course, one of the reasons we all do this, and I'll return to it in a little while, is that we hope that by going together and by trusting some of these vendors, that we might actually get the innovation which is required in order to push this system forward to serve and address the needs of our customers. We also hope, because we all have our budgets cut, that it's going to give us some savings. Of course, this is the hope we all have, and time will show whether we will succeed or not. So this is an example of a search in my own catalog for Søren Kierkegaard, a famous Danish philosopher. So I can go in, I can search, and I can get the information about the book, and I can actually find out where the book is. And then I can put in a request, and I can borrow it. Now, if I do the same search in Google, first of all, I get a bit about information about Kierkegaard. I get some factual information. I get examples of books with covers. And if I click in, I actually also can go in and I can find which library close to me who has that book. I think, if you compare those two experiences, I understand why a lot of our customers start there rather than in our catalog. So of course our catalog should be at least as nice as that. And of course it should add more. So what is Google is doing? Well, of course it's using semantics. They have developed the schema.org together with Yahoo and Bing, which actually allows them to come up with this structured information for a number of entities, which of course they have perceived as being most relevant if you use a search engine. But we can do the same. And there has been some talks about that here. We have VF, we have ORCID, we have identifiers for the articles, the DOI, and there's already a huge information network. So, we could actually use that. And just as Google used it to come up with factual information, we could use it to come up with factual information. But we could actually use it much more, because as we heard Carol talk about, and I have a slide in a little minute, we really need to evaluate, quality control, the output. She had this one, trust in reading is complex. It's not just read the abstract and orthology and all the stuff you normally do. It actually is also about the social metrics. And this is where, if we had all this unstructured information, ORCID identifiers, and we know which work they have made, what they've published, what is the impact factor of the work they have done, we might actually come up with a very important number which somehow can tell us something about the importance of the author or the importance of the work. And of course, if you are in a field, you know this. This is part of your social knowledge. But if you do cross-domain research, you do know these things, and you actually need to be told. So I think that it's actually a huge opportunity by really going on quality, and supporting the researcher to find out, what should he read and what should he not read. So, of course, we read all our stuff everywhere, and that's, this about quality is not new. This, you may call it, is complete standard information literature, or, literature, you know, when you see something, you have to be able to judge it. And this might actually be another place where libraries do play a role in the future, is really to teach students and researchers how to evaluate the result they are finding on the net with all these different methods, which are not always within our restriction. But we can do something about the thing which we are doing. So it really is about the quality of the research, the relevance of the research. Is this something I should use time reading? Or, do I waste time reading 100 articles which turned out to be crap? I think it's very important that we start to address these things. So, coming back to the actually how do we identify? Most of the systems I know about presently are using words. They play with words. Words are important. Are they close to each other? Where are they? But the thing is that we are actually getting more and more into a situation where everything around us takes our behavior into account. And we will soon have somehow to find out how can we improve our systems by using the knowledge that is generated by the general use. For instance, the BX system of Ex is an example where you can actually tag into information about other usage. We have the bibliographies and other things where people have tried to put in some information about what's valuable. Could we tag that in? But the user behavior is something. Now we run into a problem here, and that is privacy. We are actually not allowed to use a lot of the information we have about what users have borrowed, what they have borrowed together with other stuff, what they have done. So, I think we may run into some limitations where we as public institutions are restricted in what we can do compared to some of the private institutions. But we'll see. We somehow need to get in there. So, another thing which, quite often when I try to find out, what's going on, I also look at the public libraries. And I came across a quite interesting development. In a sense, the technology behind is trivial. It's a combination of mining and harvesting information and using the Z3950 and all of that. But what's interesting here is that this searches in a number of the sources which is available to the end user. So, in Denmark, this is music. We have Spotify, we have WIMP, we have BibZoom, we have CDs in the libraries. So instead of asking what your library has, it actually gives you a view over which company has which service. Supposedly, if you have WIMP, then you can use your library to actually identify the stuff in WIMP. Now, you will only do that if the library adds value. And one of the things which I think is being done a lot in libraries is themes. You build themes where you actually try to meld. And I think that's another thing which we need to address is this whole marketing aspect. It's not just, we should say, okay, friends, come in, use our search system. It really is also trying to go out, market some of the information which we have used a lot of money to buy, and get people to use it. And this is an example of how they're doing it. I could imagine that, sometimes I dream that when we are doing our resource discovery, that instead of having these different marks for the different systems, we could actually have a little price tag so that we might actually teach our researchers what it costs. Not that they have to pay, the library will pay, but if they can get a feel for the cost of the resources they're using, it might actually sharpen their attention also to things like open access and stuff like that. So, and here they have, Last.fm, WIMP, and Spotify. So, in a sense, this is a help, because we need to move. You saw the Google experience. We have all the technology. It's all out there. WeHave is all there. ORCID is all there. The DOEs are all there. It sort of is there, but we just need to put it together. And as the last speaker said, I think instead of having all these silos, because everybody fights for their speciality and the winner takes all, I really think that from a user perspective, we would all benefit if we looked at this as an ecosystem and different vendors focused on different aspects and we all had that to play together. Because, I mean, we need to support this. We have the ability of going into the cloud. We have the requirements from our users wanting to have quality, want to be able to assess the material they get. And at the same time, we are still fighting amongst each other. And when I look at this is from Marshall Breeding. I mean, he has some numbers for the number of people in Google. He has it from library vendors. I don't know if it's right. But last year, if I count all of them, I get a number which is approximately 1,000. If I look at Google, I mean, there are now 43,000. If I said half of those are developers, it's 20. It might be 2/3, it might be 30,000. Even the uncertainty in saying how many developers Google has is an order of magnitude higher than the combined development capacity of the library vendors. So I think we need to get together and we need to focus and we need to mobilize all of that to create something which is of value to our end user. So, this is my last slide. We need to add value. It's extremely important we add value. We need to support users to judge the quality based on impact, author network. We need to analyze a lot, use the big data, use on-the-fly analysis to actually improve the research results. We need to use the semantics to really build good services. We need to go into a cloud and collaborate. We need to support different delivery channels. I mean, streaming is coming. It's also for books and for articles, I'm sure. And we need the local tailoring so we can go out and market and address our own community. Thank you.